Have you ever caught yourself thinking about someone you lost touch with and felt that urge to reconnect but didn't know how to start? Maybe it's an old friend, a child you've grown distant from, or even a sibling who got lost in time. With maturity, life teaches us that time is precious, but it also gives us the wisdom and courage to start over. In this video, you'll discover 10 emotional and practical paths to rebuilding relationships in a healthy way without resentment, using techniques that touch the heart and strengthen bonds with those who truly matter. Because it's never too late to rebuild a bridge. And often, it starts with a simple phrase, "I miss you. Stay with me until the end." One of these lessons might rekindle a connection you thought was lost forever. Choose the right moment and tone. Rebuilding a relationship, my dear friends, is like tending to a wounded plant. You can't just water it carelessly at any time. It requires sensitivity, time, and the right environment. Many reconciliations that could have worked out end up failing simply because the timing was wrong, or because the tone came across as demanding rather than an invitation to reconnect. Have you ever experienced that? That sincere desire to talk to someone, but the conversation turned into an argument, or the other person seemed distant, defensive. Exactly. It's not just what we say that matters, but when and how we say it. Choosing the right moment is an act of respect, not just for the other person, but for ourselves. It's recognizing that for a heart to open, it needs to be ready. Forcing a conversation in the heat of emotion or during a tense situation can close doors that were already slightly ajar. So take a breath. Observe. Wait for the moment when your heart is calm, when the desire to reconnect is stronger than the resentment. Avoid trying to resolve everything at once, especially if the other person is still hurt or wary. Reconciliation is a process, not an emergency. And the tone is the soul of the encounter. Often, a simple "we need to talk" can sound intimidating, like a threat. But when we say gently, "I've missed you and would love to talk if you're open to it," we create space for the other person to feel welcomed, not pressured. The tone carries the intention. It reveals whether we're seeking reconnection or redemption. And most of the time, what people want isn't to hear justifications, but to feel remembered with affection. Think of a delicate situation. A mother who fought with her daughter years ago over a life decision she disagreed with. They went years without speaking. But one day, the mother decides enough is enough. She writes a simple letter, not full of explanations, but full of heart. She says she misses their conversations. Her daughter's smile acknowledges she may have been harsh, and that if her daughter is willing, she'd love to share coffee someday. No demands, no expectations. The letter doesn't fix everything immediately, but it plants something. Something that can bloom. That's what the right moment does. It prepares the soil. The right tone is the seed, and true intention is the water. So, before reaching out, ask yourself calmly, is this a good time for both of us? And more importantly, am I approaching this to impose my truth, or to also listen to the other person's pain? If you realize you're acting out of haste or lingering emotion, maybe it's better to wait a little longer. Not as avoidance, but as wisdom. Remember, when the tone is kind, even difficult words find a safe place to land. And when the timing is right, the truth is more likely to be welcomed than fought. Sometimes, a simple, "Hi, I was thinking about you today," sent at the right time, with tenderness and no grand expectations, can open a door that's been closed for years. And with the door open, even just a crack, the light begins to come in. Understand the emotional context. When we drift apart from someone, it's rarely because of just one reason. Sometimes it's a quiet buildup of small resentments. Other times, a poorly chosen word, spoken in a moment of vulnerability, becomes a wall between hearts that once walked together. But behind every hurt, there's a story, there's pain. There's something that wasn't heard, something that wasn't understood. And before any attempt at reconciliation, it's crucial to understand what really happened, not just what was said, but what was felt. And that, my dear friends, starts within, with an honest exercise of introspection. Before reaching out to the other person, we must look at ourselves with honesty. Ask yourself, what did I feel in that moment? What truly hurt me? Was it what the person said, or what I thought they meant? Often, what wounds us isn't the action itself, but the meaning we assign to it. And that gets tangled with old pains, insecurities we've carried long before that incident. Now imagine, for example, two brothers. One of them distanced himself from the other years ago after an argument at a family gathering. Harsh words were exchanged, accusations, judgments. Time passed, each went on with their lives. But deep down, both missed the closeness they shared in their youth, the laughter, the moments when one protected the other in hard times. The problem was neither knew how to take the first step. Each waited for the other to understand, to apologize. And so, years went by in silence. One day, the older brother received difficult news. The other had fallen ill. And in that instant, all the resentment lost its grip. Bitterness gave way to love. He went to the hospital, sat by his brothers, sighed, and simply said, "I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to say it." Nothing more was needed. The reunion happened through the courage to admit that the pain wasn't stronger than the longing. And that's why understanding the emotional context is the first step toward any real reconciliation. Because when we grasp what we felt and also try to imagine what the other person may have felt, we make room for empathy. We stop seeing ourselves as victims and become active participants in healing. This doesn't mean we must accept everything or forget what hurt us, but rather that we seek to understand before judging. That changes everything. So before you think about reconnecting, before sending that message or making that call, pause for a moment, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask yourself calmly, what really happened between us? What did I feel? What might he or she have felt too? And above all, what still lingers in me that keeps me from moving forward? Often, forgiveness doesn't begin with the other person. It begins with our own understanding, with our choice to look at the past with wiser, kinder eyes. Sometimes, acknowledging our own pain without guilt, without shame is already the start of reconnection. Because when we can name our emotions, we can also transform them. And maybe, just maybe, free both ourselves and the other person from a weight that should have been left where it belongs, in the past. The art of active listening. Rebuilding a relationship isn't just about speaking. It's, above all, about knowing how to listen. And to truly listen with an open heart, without interrupting, without judging, without preparing a response while the other is still sharing. That's what we call active listening. And it's one of the most powerful tools we have when we want to mend a bond. But active listening isn't something forced. It's cultivated. It requires presence, silence, and humility. Because to truly hear the other person, we must let go, even if just for a few minutes, of our version of events, our wounds, our justifications. That doesn't mean they don't matter. It just means that, in that moment, we choose to give the other person space so they feel safe enough to trust again. Often, when someone is hurting, all they need is to feel understood. They don't always want a solution. Sometimes they just want to be heard without interruption, without their feelings being dismissed or corrected. And that, my dear friends, takes more than just attentive ears. It takes a present soul. Picture a reunion between a grandmother and her granddaughter. After years of no contact, the granddaughter arrives carrying childhood resentments. She felt overlooked, misunderstood. The grandmother, as she listens, feels the urge to explain, to say that was never her intention. But she chooses to stay silent. With a heavy heart, she lets her granddaughter speak. When the young woman finishes, tears in her eyes, the grandmother takes her hand and says, "I had no idea you felt all this. And I'm deeply sorry if in any way I contributed to that pain." That gesture, listening with openness and responding with empathy, is more healing than any argument. In active listening, body language also matters. Steady eye contact, a slight nod, a gentle touch. All of it says, "I'm here, I care. Your pain is valid." Avoid interrupting. Avoid rushing to fix everything. Sometimes, loving silence speaks louder than 1,000 words of advice. If something in the conversation moves you deeply, breathe. Allow yourself to feel, but don't make it about you before it's time. Listening patiently is a rare gift and deeply transformative. Those who feel heard feel valued. And those who feel valued slowly open up to forgiveness, to empathy, to reconciliation. At the end, you can confirm your understanding. "If I understood correctly, you felt alone when I..." That simple phrase shows care and prevents misunderstandings. It shows you didn't just hear, you wanted to understand. Remember, listening is an act of love. And mature love knows how to wait, how to stay silent, how to hold space. Rebuilding bonds often starts by quieting our own pain for a moment. To listen with our whole being to what the other has to say. Because deep down, every human being needs just two things to begin healing: to be heard and to be felt. Express your feelings without blame. After listening with an open heart comes a delicate but necessary moment: speaking up. But how do we express what we feel without making the other person feel attacked? How do we share our truth without turning the reunion into another battle of justifications and resentments? The key lies in speaking from yourself, not about the other. Instead of pointing fingers and saying, "You hurt me," we can try, "I felt hurt by what happened." It may seem subtle, but the difference is profound. When we use "I" to share our experience, we create space for the other person to listen without becoming defensive. Blame gives way to empathy. Accusation transforms into sharing. Many of us were taught to suppress our feelings, to swallow our pain to avoid conflict. But unspoken feelings fester inside. And when they finally come out, they often emerge as arrows, wounding more deeply than intended. But there's another way: honest, compassionate speech, not shouting, not hurting, but revealing with courage and tenderness what was once hidden. Imagine a reunion between a father and his son. The son grew up feeling his father was distant, absent. He could angrily say, "You were never there." But he chooses a different path. He takes a deep breath and says, "Dad, when I was little, I often felt your absence, and I missed you. Now, as an adult, I don't want to blame you. I just want you to know how much that affected me." By speaking this way, not with an accusing finger, but with an open heart, he gives his father the chance to listen, reflect, maybe even apologize without fear or shame. Expressing yourself without blame is an art, and like all art, it improves. With time, practice, and humility. It requires connecting with the real emotion beneath the hurt. Was it sadness? Loneliness? Disappointment? When we name that feeling, we get closer to our truth and to the possibility of being understood. Another important point: don't use this moment to list every past wrong. Choose one or two situations that symbolize what you felt. Speak calmly, making eye contact, and if emotions rise, let them. Crying isn't weakness, it's honesty. Above all, speak with the intention to heal, not to win. Reconciliation isn't about waging war. It's about offering a bridge. And bridges are built with words that welcome, not words that divide. You might say, for example, "When that happened, I felt left out. And I wanted to share this not to blame you, but so we can understand each other better moving forward." See, you're not demanding anything, you're inviting, you're opening up, you're trusting. And that trust, when genuine, can soften even the hardest hearts. Speaking without blame is one of the greatest gifts we can give in reconciliation. It allows the other person to keep listening, and more importantly, it lets you stay true to your feelings without needing to attack in self-defense. Because at its core, expressing emotions is like lighting a soft lamp in a dark room. It illuminates the pain, but it also reveals paths that were once invisible. And where there's light, reconnection becomes possible. Accept that you won't agree on everything. In any attempt at reconciliation, it's natural to want to settle the score, to clarify everything point by point, as if the truth must be identical for both. But life, in its wisdom, teaches us that this isn't always possible, and that's okay. Because love, reconnection, moving forward, none of these depend on total agreement. They depend on respecting what the other person feels, even if it differs from what we believe. Accepting differences is an act of deep emotional maturity. It's understanding that two people can experience the same event in completely different ways, and both versions can be true within their own perspectives. Problems arise when we insist our version is the only valid one, treating the others' memory as a distortion. But every memory carries a feeling, and feelings aren't up for debate, they're to be acknowledged. Take a simple but real example. Two sisters who grew up together but remember their childhood very differently. One recalls it fondly, the other with pain. Who's right? Maybe both, maybe neither. What matters is that each lived it in her own way, and that way deserves respect, not correction. When you try to rebuild a relationship, you may encounter opinions, memories, or interpretations that feel unfair or distorted. In that moment, you'll have a choice: cling to the need to be right, or let go of pride to preserve the bond. This doesn't mean accepting lies or swallowing injustice. It simply means reconciliation doesn't require absolute consensus. It requires mutual respect. You might say, "I see it differently, but I understand why you felt that way." This simple phrase can prevent arguments, keep the conversation from derailing. It shows you're not there to win, but to understand. Not to prove a point, but to walk forward again with someone who matters. Sometimes, the other person is also in pain. And pain often distorts memories, amplifies hurts, magnifies mistakes. Instead of correcting, try acknowledging. Say, "I'm sorry you felt that way. It wasn't my intention, but I deeply regret it." And watch how this small act of humility can open doors that seemed locked for years. The truth is, reconciliation isn't about fixing the past. It's an invitation to build a new present. And that present only lasts when there's room for the other person to be who they are, with their thoughts, their memories, their pain. Accepting that not everything will be resolved, not everything will be clarified, is liberating. It frees us from the burden of repairing every broken piece and lets us simply move forward with more lightness, more humanity, more love. In the end, what keeps bonds strong isn't agreement, it's affection. It's the willingness to continue despite differences. It's the look that says, "Even if we don't see eye to eye, I still want you in my life." And that, my dear friends, is wisdom. The wisdom of those who've lived long enough to know life is too short to insist on always being right, and too precious to lose loved ones over stubbornness or pride. Small gestures that rebuild trust. After words comes the hardest and most genuine part: time. Because trust isn't rebuilt with a single apology or one well-handled conversation. Trust is planted like a seed, and then nurtured day after day with small gestures, consistency, and patience. And here's a secret life teaches us with maturity: sometimes the simplest things hold the deepest meaning. You don't need grand declarations or sweeping promises. Sometimes a good morning sent at the same time every day, remembering someone's birthday even if they forgot yours, or asking sincerely, "Are you okay?" All these things build invisible bridges between two hearts that were once distant. When we try to mend a relationship, We often think we need a big moment to fix everything. But trust, my friend, doesn't return all at once. It comes back quietly. A look of attention, a shared cup of coffee, a respectful silence, a sincere compliment, and most importantly, consistency between what you say and what you do. Remember, someone who felt hurt or betrayed needs time to believe again. And nothing can rush that process. Only consistency can. The steady proof, through repeated actions, that you're truly there, not out of impulse or loneliness, but out of love. Imagine a granddaughter who, for years, felt her grandmother was distant. After a difficult conversation, the grandmother starts calling every week just to hear the girl's voice. She doesn't say much. Sometimes she just listens. But she's there. And that repeated presence, that simple gesture, begins to change everything. It wasn't the apology that healed. It was the small acts that followed. It's also important to respect the other person's pace. If they're still distant, don't force intimacy. Take it slow, one step at a time. Trust is like a wooden bridge. If you step too hard, it might give way. But if you walk lightly, it will carry you to the other side. And if at some point you make another mistake, and we're human, we do, the most important thing is to acknowledge it honestly. I'm sorry, I messed up. But I want to keep trying. That means more than any rehearsed speech. Symbolic gestures also matter. An old photo sent with care, a childhood memory, a food that brings back good times. These small emotional anchors remind the heart of the good moments and help rebuild. Faith in the bond being restored. Never underestimate the power of a single gesture. An unexpected message, a quiet act of help, a look that says, I'm here, even if you're still distant. Because sometimes the other person isn't ready to come closer yet. But knowing you're there, steady and kind, changes everything. Trust isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about creating new experiences that prove day after day. There's something stronger than the pain that was lived. The sincere desire to start again. And starting again, my dear friends, is just that. One day at a time. One word at a time. One gesture at a time. Like stitching a delicate fabric, stitch by stitch. With faith that, in the end, it will once again cover what was torn with more beauty, more care, and more love. Learn to apologize sincerely. True apology is one of the noblest and most challenging acts in life. It's not just a word tossed into the wind. I'm sorry shouldn't be a shortcut to end a conflict. It should be a sincere bridge to start anew, with humility and awareness. Most of us have heard empty apologies at some point. One said out of obligation or loaded with justifications. I'm sorry, but you also messed up. Or, if you felt offended, then I apologize. Notice how phrases like these don't acknowledge the other's pain. They just shift blame. A sincere apology means looking someone in the eye, lowering your guard, and saying with an open heart, I was wrong. I recognize the hurt I caused. And even if it wasn't my intention, I take responsibility for what happened. That, my friends, is an act of greatness. It comes from someone who understands that a relationship is worth more than personal pride. Sometimes, we're afraid to apologize because we think we'll lose respect or seem weak. But the opposite is true. Those who have the courage to admit their mistakes inspire trust. They show character, maturity, a willingness to grow, not just to win arguments. Imagine a grandfather who distanced himself from his son for years after an old argument. One day, he gathers his courage, calls, and says, Son, I was wrong. I was angry, and I said things I shouldn't have. I never stopped loving you, but I let my pride lead me. Forgive me, if there's still room for that. Maybe the son won't forgive right away. But that apology, spoken with sincerity, will be remembered. It will touch his heart. It will plant a seed. To apologize sincerely, you must listen to how the other person feels. You must validate their pain. Saying, "I'm sorry," and then justifying every action won't help. It shuts the door that was just beginning to open. Instead, try saying, "I hear what you're telling me, and it hurts to know I hurt you." That phrase holds more power than 1,000 arguments. And one more thing, a sincere apology doesn't demand, pressure, or expect instant forgiveness. It respects the other person's healing time. Because an apology isn't a magic trick that erases the past. It's just this is already a lot of gesture that shows remorse and a desire to change. Remember, there's no shame in admitting mistakes. The real shame is living an entire life trapped in pride, cut off from those you love, because you never learned to say, "I'm sorry." Apologizing may seem hard, but it's one of the most freeing things you can do. It lifts a weight off your shoulders, it calms the heart, and most importantly, it gives the other person the chance to see you as human. Flawed, yes, but sincere. And if one day you sense someone struggling to apologize to you, help them with your silence, your listening, your gaze. Sometimes forgiveness begins even before the word sorry is spoken. Asking for forgiveness is taking a step toward the other, with teary eyes, with your heart in your hands, but above all, with your soul unguarded. And when that happens, my dear friends, even the oldest wounds begin to heal. And so, dear listener, we've reached the end of this journey of Reconnecting. Today, we've spoken about wounds left in time, about words left unsaid, about forgotten gestures, but above all, we've spoken about hope. Hope that it's always possible to rebuild, always possible to love again, with more wisdom, more listening, more likeness. Maybe you're there right now, thinking of someone who drifted away, someone whose bond with you was broken, someone you still miss but also resent. Take a deep breath. Hold that person in your thoughts and ask yourself honestly, is it worth staying apart? Or is there still something there worth another chance? Reconnecting isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to move forward without carrying the weight. It's extending a hand even when it trembles. It's trying once more, not because everything is resolved, but because love is stronger than silence. You're not alone on this journey. Many of us at this stage in life feel this longing to heal what was left open, to look back with peace in our hearts. And if this video touched you, if it brought even a little light, then it has served its purpose. Now, I invite you wholeheartedly to share your story in the comments. Have you ever rekindled a relationship that seemed lost? Or do you still hold inside the desire to reconnect with someone important? Sharing might be the first step toward healing. And your experience could inspire others who are also sitting in silence, feeling the same. And if this content resonated with you, like the video, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe to the channel. Here, we're building a space of mature wisdom, of true listening, of emotional healing, a place for those who still believe in the power of reconciliation, family, friendship, and forgiveness. Remember, it's never too late to start again. As long as there's life, there's time to rebuild bridges, with warmth, with respect, and with the wisdom that the years have given us. We walk this journey together. Until the next video.